a retreat place.
And you hear the birds and trees, and it is community, it's learning.
Hello everyone! Hello! This is amazing, a few minutes before the meeting and we're already 15 participants. Yeah, welcome for everyone. Hopefully I will not be the only one with the video on the screen, so please don't be shy. As you can see here, it's just many of us. Yeah, we're starting the screen sharing. Also. Hey Vipin, long time no see. Thank you for joining. Okay, so maybe I will allow a little mic for a while for everyone. Oh, welcome. Hello Lena. Hello Beatrice, and I see a lot of people on the chat. If you're yes, don't hesitate to say a little hello. I will try to read all of our messages. Antoine is also here, of course.
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Hello everyone. We can start talking a little. You can activate your mic for a while. Just welcoming each and one of us. Hi Betty. Right around here we have also a room full of Suderbinians having their own projection over there. Also not to overload all of our network with 20 or 30 people computers. Nice. Hello, Niklas, and bon appetit.
Hello, yeah.
It makes me so happy to see really people having lunch while being with us.
We thought it was a good idea.
Thank you. And you know what? Okay, you give me an idea. Okay, Niklas. So, both of you, what are you eating?
It's my wife Solveig here who has made the lunch. It's vegetables and pasta and sprouts and corn and everything. Yeah, very nice.
Bless your hands. Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to. Okay, who else is having lunch? Maybe share what are you having right now, or a bit later. Pepin, is that an orange? I'm having some tea just in case for the code. Yes, so don't hesitate to share. Thank you. Yeah, Elena, it's some tea too. Amazing. From Germany. Yes, I think for today we're gonna have some homemade lasagnas. Yeah, I'm quite curious. What are you guys eating for lunch this morning? Because the topic of today is about food. So hit the chat and share if you'd like. Yeah. We've reached 30 participants and it's 32. Yeah. Give it a little time. I'm waiting also. Oh, Antoine has shared his camera. Did he? No, maybe you can now. Okay. Nice. Bon appetit, Venena. Sounds delicious also. Sounds delicious. Yes, quite a lot of people. So this is your chance, guys. If you want to activate your mic, start presenting yourself, because in a few minutes it's gonna be all for Antoine. Antoine is smiling. I think can you see him? Yeah, I'm just behind him. I don't know if you see my arm just around there. Oh, nice. Let us know how it goes. We've tried that, doing also our sourdough starter. It went well for 6 or 7 weeks. And then someone else started making the bread and forgot about it. And well, you know what happens when you don't use it. It becomes an ecosystem on its own and life grows. Not edible life, but life nonetheless. That's good. That's good.
Actuellement l'écran de Antoine Arquié.
So we are. Oh, is that your parents, Antoine? Hello, Daniel. Hello, Chantal.
Hello.
Bonjour, bonjour.
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 So yes, we're gonna start soon. So I'm gonna start muting. Can you please everyone mute your mic so that the presentation can go smoothly? If you have any question, any feedback, you can hit the chat. And now we have a nice echo. Antoine, mute you just for a second.
Ah?
Mute-toi pendant une seconde.
Ah, okay.
Of course, that's gonna happen. So if you have any question, you can write it on the chat. We're gonna raise them after the presentation, after the talk. And yeah, I'm gonna leave the floor now to Antoine. So Antoine has been in Suderbyn for a few years now, been coordinating our co-coordinating with Laura our work in the garden, the farming work, every workshop regarding seeds, regarding gardening, regarding harvesting the food. So a lot of things. And we wanted to take this opportunity to share a little about knowledge and about, yeah, I would say also philosophy. So I'm not gonna say anything more. I'm gonna mute my mic and leave the floor to Antoine. And hope everyone to have a nice webinar for this first edition, first step of our renewable future.
Hi everyone, I hope you can hear me well. Thank you, Abdul, for organizing all of this and for all the technical aspect. Yeah, let's get started. I think this talk was not planned in this setting in this way, but overall I think it's quite interesting how it turned out. That many people right now, I realize, kind of stuck somewhere, most likely at home, with quite a lot of questions on their mind or quite a lot of wondering maybe. And I realized for me, it's kind of a metaphor of a situation where I used to be, where I was quite stuck in a life and in a way of living that I didn't want it to have. And I was quite frustrated and overwhelmed and confused about what I needed to do to help the world, to support my fellow human beings and to fight climate change. And it seemed like there was not much one could do really that had really a truly holistic and long-term and both grassroots but also systemic impact. And that was, and I meet quite often people who feel this way. And well, long story short, for me, it didn't really last. And I came to realize through different experiences and life that actually growing my own food in a regenerative way was this simple act that would actually tick all the boxes while providing for my essential needs and the needs of the people around me. And that's the great thing about gardening, and especially if you do it with nature, not against nature, is that food is so central to our lives and our societies. I mean, you all eat food at some point in the day in the life, that when you start growing it, you impact much more than your own life and your own nourishment, so to say. So you have to imagine somehow, doesn't work. There it is. You have to imagine somehow these giant domino structures, this one where you just push one and everything starts to fall after. And this is kind of an image of what happens when you start to grow your own food on a systemic level. And that's what makes me say that gardening, and especially regenerative gardening, is a radical act of revolution against the old system and a radical act of creation of a new culture and a new reality. And that might sound like a very bold and pretentious statement. After all, you can think, well, what's more selfish and little than just staying at home and growing your own food on your little plot of land? And I actually consider that gardening is my activism at the same level or even higher than going in the street and protesting or signing petitions and these kind of things. And the reason for that is that it comes down to responsibility, that it's about, instead of criticizing others or trying to change others, saying, I will change myself, I will take responsibility for myself and the people around me, to not wait for people to do something, but to walk the talk, to inspire others, to do what needs to be done, and at the same time, do the things that need to be done and show how it's done. And on a political level, this act of gardening and regenerative gardening that I will talk a lot about is simply and humbly and very, very, very basically about making the whole system obsolete. And I'm talking system in a very big way, like the political side, the financial side, the military side, you could even say, the pharmaceutical side, everything, all of these aspects are being rendered obsolete by gardening when you start to do these things. Because instead of fighting some reality, you just decide to not support it and let it fall of its own absurdity, of its own weight, of its own contradictions. And that's how it works today, that we are against our will. Most of us are supporting something that we don't want to support because we don't really have the choice, because we are in a context that doesn't allow us to do something else. And this whole idea of just a big happy boycott is, in my opinion, what we need to change things in a productive, quick, and effective way. And if you think about it, it's as simple as this, that all the digging, the mining, the exploitation of Mother Nature, it just will stop if we don't need to buy the stuff or don't need to purchase or consume the things that we have to do. And this all somehow, even though there are other things than food, comes down a lot to food. So the first thing that naturally you neutralize when you start to grow your own food is our sick and broken food system. So I'm talking really big level. I'm not talking about something that we just need to put a bit of paint there and change a few things there and there. It's about the whole thing that is rotten to the core. It's about a system that exploits farmers, animals, and land alike, that poisons directly the consumer, then the seed and the river, and then the consumer again. It's about a system that destroys soil ecosystems at the same rate as it destroys living human cultures, like in the Amazonian. And it's about a system that does all these things. And I include also in this a big part, the biggest part of organic certified agriculture, which is much closer to poisoning conventional agriculture than we might think, because most of the time it still implies excessive plowing that destroys the soil. It still implies heavy reliance on fossil resources that are doomed to disappear at some point, or to become very, very expensive and very hard to mine. And it also implies destroying seed diversity, to give a few examples. So these are two things that are much, much closer to each other than what you might think. And as long as we don't have this relationship food, where you know the person that grew it, or you are the person that grew it yourself, then I think that we cannot really change this. And this, as I said at the beginning, food is very central to our lives and to our something you can't really get away from. So when you start to tackle this, it's not just the food system, but everything connected to it. So I'm talking about the cheap food supermarket empires. I'm talking about the pandemic of lifestyle diseases such as obesity and other things like this. I'm talking about the stock exchange that plays with the price of staples in poor countries. I'm talking about the super polluted chemical industry that industrial farming depends on. All of these heads of the hydra are neutralized one garden at a time, one seed at a time, when you decide to make a choice of saying, I will grow this myself, I will not go to the supermarket and buy it. Yeah. So that the good news is that I'm kind of done with the bad news and the bad stuff, and now we're going to go through more positive things, because the idea of the transformative change that is brought by regenerative gardening is more about, it's not only about bringing the old system down, but also about creating a new reality. And this, the good news is that you can do it safely at home with your own two hands, with your family around. And it doesn't imply so much, it doesn't require so much. And with this, you can already start to do amazing stuff, which I don't know if anyone, and no one ever went to me and told me this, that I could regenerate soil ecosystems, which is an essential piece of life to which we owe our survival on Earth. If it disappears, something that we take as granted as soil, there's not much chance that we will be able to survive, because yeah, hydroponics and all, yeah, it's not so much able to grow wheat and stuff like this. The other things that you can do is that you can clean the water, you can cycle nutrients infinitely, you can heal entire ecosystems just starting by your own body, because you are a walking ecosystem. And the great thing about this is that you can heal the world through taking care of yourself, with garden exercise, with contact with the dirt, and with real food. This concept of real food is something that actually has nutrients in it and actually has some taste, not like the tomatoes we can eat at the supermarkets. And this impact, it goes beyond your own body, beyond your own garden, because you sort of create a community around yourself, kind of spontaneously and very naturally. When you start to garden, you create recreate or regenerate or feed a local people-based economy, which doesn't necessarily need money. As you exchange seeds, knowledge, plants, food, you recreate some kind of glue between people, the same way the humus creates connection between the soil aggregates. And this is an example here in Suderbyn last October, so pretty nice. And you see that the people are sort of doing different things, but they are kind of commoning together through this nurturing of the land and care for the place. And this you can do through other ways, not only eco-villages, but also community-supported agriculture, community gardens, food forest, public food forest, school gardens, maybe I already said it, I don't know. Incredible edible movement, which implies growing food for free in town. So all of this, there's many options where you don't really need to have land, you don't really need to own land, and you don't really need to be alone. And beyond even this, there's this idea that our gardens without borders can be mirrors of our thoughts, of our values, of what matters for us. It's not just about what the garden brings directly, which is already huge, but there's a few examples I'd like to share. So in the corner down, this woman in red is Dr. Vandana Shiva, that most of you probably know, who, among other things, she does a lot of things, is contributing to preserve seed diversity and all the varieties in India to help farmers be more reliant and allow them, for example, to resist the temptation or the lies of Monsanto, who tells them that they can buy the fresh new variety that the GMO variety that will make them more productive, which often leads them to debt, economical distress, and suicide. So that's an example of how a simple thing as saving seed is something very essential that our forefathers didn't really question or didn't really think about, as a huge political impact in the day today. On the left, or is it the right? I don't know. You have the food is free movement, which is mostly in the US, as far as I know. This idea of growing food for free at home, so it's home gardens, and people share this with their neighbors, with with low income, in low income areas where it's in areas that are called food deserts, where you cannot really buy real food. Anything is wrapped in plastic. There's no nutrients. There's no real food. It's just empty calories, and yeah. And this is a movement where people are just deciding to give food for free to their neighbors and recreating connection at the same time. So here are two examples that are quite activistish, I would say. And then in the corner with the Spitz cabbage, we have Sarah Beckmo, who is a Swedish gardener. And again, among other things, she does many other things. She has quite a focus on teaching people how to combine gardening and self-reliance with raising children and family life, which is maybe not as politically activist-like as the two other examples, but it is about bringing some big change into the world and teaching something with the platform of a garden, with the garden being the mirror of these values and what's important. So my point here is that you can give me pretty much any issue or any challenge that we face in society today. I can say that a garden is the solution. It's not the solution to all our problems, but it is a solution to all our problems. So you can give me problems linked to, I don't know, poverty, health, conflict between different populations, culture, preservation of local cultures, personal development, empowerment, citizenship, integration of people, different people at the margins, whether it is immigrants or it can be also people with handicap. All of this stuff can be sort of managed and can be catalyzed and solved with a garden. So it might sound now that I kind of went around all the good things that we can do with gardening, and that's the part which is a bit different at the end. I think that we barely scratched the surface. All we did now was quite solving some immediate problems and immediate bad things and bring some immediate good things. And now we'd like to go a bit deeper. So that's the last part of the talk where I get a bit spiritual. So I hope you can bear with me and we can finish together. So this idea of regenerative gardening, the part that to me and to my personal experience is the most transformative and what really will get us out of the mud, there's nothing wrong with mud, but we'll get out of our problems, is the fact that through regenerative gardening, one builds up a reconnection with the land and relearns or accepts again that Earth is alive, whole, and sacred. I insist on this sentence that it's not some kind of inspirational quote that I want you to put on social media to look cool. To me, to my learning, it's some kind of scientific reality, a scientific truth that you can observe through any society that's managed and that's still managed now to live within the boundaries of modern nature, to live happily with these boundaries. These societies, these groups of people, of humans, they have, and they had, and they still have, the ones that are still here, this core belief, more or less with different stories, with different rites, with different cultures, doesn't matter. They had this core belief really at the story, at the core of how they relate to each other, how they act in their everyday life, and how they produce, consume, and live and die, basically. And this is what we lack today, and it's a huge work to bring it back. It's not something we can just decrete like this, like I'm doing. So the point is that, turn the wrong page. I don't need it anymore. The point is that once we can really accept back this reality of modern nature, and I'm consciously not saying the environment, because the environment for me is a dead world that is part of this dead story that tells us that we can plunder things around, dig, destroy, as long as we do it sustainably. As soon as we accept this reality that Mother Nature is some kind of conscious big being that cares and nurtures us the same way as our mother did for us, then we can start to interact with her in a very different way. And then it doesn't feel like a sacrifice to give up on certain things or to accept certain realities. I'm afraid that if we don't do this spiritual acknowledgement or this cultural acknowledgement, we will be stuck into trying to negotiate with obvious boundaries of Mother Nature as if they were clauses of a contract we can choose to change at our own little caprices and desires. And I'm afraid that otherwise we will always end up seeing change, and the change that we need to do as a sacrifice, as a bad thing. And over the fact that I don't think we really have the choice, I think it's also a beautiful way to live, because you end up being surrounded by life, magic, and you start to see invisible threads flying through the air between the bee and the tree and the soil. You start to see the roots and the stuff all around them. I think that's a pretty beautiful way to live, and a pretty meaningful way as well. So, and that's where we come back to the garden, because the garden is basically this platform for reconnection and this platform for acknowledging this truth that otherwise a person like me would have a big difficulty to acknowledge having been raised in the context where you see a forest, it's just a forest, it's just a bunch of trees. And when you start to do gardening, and when you start to garden with nature, to garden in really deep point, any more not accept this reality that Earth is alive, whole, and sacred. And despite the fact that all I said at the beginning is also very important, that's for me the main thing, that I think the main reason why we should be more starting to nurture the land and to nurture ourselves and our communities in the same process. And at the same time, fixing our societies while getting this climate change thing solved. And at the same time, getting very, very tasty tomatoes. So that was my point. Thanks for your attention. I will give the mic back to Abdul, I guess.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
You can stick around. Yeah, sorry for the ending. I think we had a little network issue, but I'm quite happy that nothing happened for most of the talk. Thank you very much, Antoine, and thank you for everyone for your attention for this talk. Now it's a good time for a little question and answer, and we already have two ones that are written. So one from Leonor for Antoine. What do you mean by garden? What is the difference with a farm?
That's a very good question. Actually, there's a lot of people that thought about this before me. There's this guy, Will Bonsell, who's in the US, a seed saver and many other things. He's also an author, and he decided to sort of give up on the question because for him it's he doesn't have big machinery or anything, and yet it's a pretty big garden with cereals and pulses productions. So you cannot really call it a tiny little garden anymore. But what I think I use the word garden because it's more accessible. If I would start to tell people to farm, which I don't consider I do myself, I think it would sound too big. Anyone can. Most people who have access to a piece of soil outside of their house can say I have a garden, but saying I have a farm is a bit more complicated. So I use the word garden for this. Yeah, and what happens is then you grow food on it. Yeah, that's this.
There was, I think, another question. Just a remark. There should be access to a garden for everybody. Mm-hmm. Garden as a responsible element for any human habitat.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think one thing that I was thinking about when I was talking about this, when I'm basically like encouraging people to do something, is that you can have this reaction of, oh, but I don't have a garden, I live in an apartment. And I think we're all surrounded. It's Bill Mollison was saying this about permaculture. He was saying that we're surrounded by opportunities to a point that is overwhelming. And actually, even in the city, even in a place where you might think there's no soil here, there's no way I can grow anything, there is always a way to get access to gardening, to a piece of terrain where you can actually grow food, even if there's no soil. Soil can be brought. I mean, that's what they do on the, how do you call this? Help me with this one. Big buildings. No, the rooftop gardening. Exactly. Thank you. So yeah. But naturally, it's easier when you are in the countryside like us. But I do think that there are many opportunities that like vacant spots in towns, etc., etc.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a gift from Zoom. Interesting. since we're in Sweden with quite a specific climate, with specific hardships, how do you reflect on that? Because people would say, okay, but in a really cold climate with not that much sun, it can be hard growing food. Actually.
Yeah, I think it's, I would say it's a very, it's again a matter of how you relate to the land and how you relate to, how do you relate to your land and to your climate. And here on Gotland, we have pretty good climate for Sweden, actually, probably the best. It's all a matter of adapting. If I want to grow bananas and mangoes here, I will always complain. If I accept the reality that there are late frosts, that there's a lot of wind, that it's pretty dry in the summer and all, then I adapt and then I adjust, and then naturally it gets much easier.
Okay.
And so it's a matter of how you relate to it. It's the same thing as saying, I don't have much space, I cannot grow many things. Then you have 1,000 examples of people with 20 square meters of gardening, which uses the vertical space, etc. So the limits are actually encouraging things for your imagination and saying, okay, I have to find a microclimate for this plant because there is a frost. There's late frost coming when they start to bud. So and this is actually kind of stimulates the imagination, the limits. So it's the limitation of the climate or of the whatever you have.
Yeah, that's what we usually say. The hardships or the limitations, that's what enables creativity and ingenuity. And we have 2-3 questions. Where to begin? If we had to start from zero, what would be our first steps? From Amsterdam. Thank you for your question, Lauren.
That's a very good question. Where to begin? I think it starts with what do you want from gardening. Some people want to be totally self-sufficient, so then you would require a certain amount of land, a certain amount of equipment, and some time naturally to learn. I also think, but then maybe you want to have a nice place to chill with a few veggies, and that's already great. That's already amazing. It's not everyone needs to be 100% self-sufficient. Okay. It's a matter of trying to really figure out what you want, and then from there you can design, knowing what your objectives are and also knowing where you will do it. If you want to live in town, for example, maybe you will have to drive to the countryside to have access to a field, or you want to garden in city with your friends. So again, it's really about knowing your context, and the first basis of the context is yourself. What do you want? If you start to act in a way, garden in a way that doesn't actually feed what you need, then
in terms of time, in terms of energy, in terms
and
of
also I think then going from what you want, you can start to dream, draw yourself in your dream garden, and that's a powerful step to start designing and to start imagining how it will look like, instead of, I don't know, running to the garden and start digging the ground and not knowing what you're doing. And then I would say a lot of not so much research. Start with easy vegetables like pumpkins. Very easy. It's very easy to get seeds. It gives a lot, so it's very encouraging. You have to give yourself easy victories. I would say this. And then not overworking.
We are quite over time, but since I see not everyone leaving, we're gonna take 2 more questions. Okay, maybe light one. Okay. What is, in your opinion, is the most engaging way to convince people in the city that gardening is important?
I think the best way is to bring them to a garden and make them garden, actually. Because I can talk as much as I want on how cool it is, as long as you don't get someone their hands in the ground and see how actually the plants grow. Like, it's crazy. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but how much kids and even adults don't know how plants look like, then it's a wonder. Like, people are just like, wow. It's like, so for those who play video games, it's like a video game in reality. For those who like movies, it's like, it gets like, wow, you realize how amazing this stuff is and how accessible it is. So I think somehow bringing them not just to watch it, but to do it themselves, and even a tiny bit, even simple tasks. I think even the most repelled person by the idea of dirt and soil and plants and thinking that it's a toil and all would get easily convinced.
Especially after biting the first tomato.
Yeah, yeah. Also, making them taste your food. That's a very good example. Yeah, tomatoes is. I mean, they are vegetables that I can still eat from outside. That I think it does make a big difference from the ones we grow. But tomatoes is a huge difference. I mean, there's like a universe in between. So yeah, making them taste your tomatoes is a good point. Yeah.
All right. Self-sufficiency is great. Community resiliency is better. Is Suderbyn practicing with the? Yeah. Are we practicing with our neighbors or Gotland community how to create a stronger network? That's a really good and hard question, Curie.
Yeah. So I guess you can be referring as this as building up the self-sufficiency at the scale of a bioregion. We have a good scale of a bioregion because it's an island. So an island has clearly limited boundaries, both in terms of physical, so it's easy to see the boundaries, but also like you need a boat or a plane to bring things in. We are not there yet. We are building connections with our neighbors, especially practical connections, like getting the wastes, coffee grounds and other kinds of and leaves from our neighbors, which is a hostel.
Yes.
So giving them the occasion to do something sustainable and us getting something in the way. Also building connections with the local community, but no, we are not there yet. Yeah, it requires, I mean, there you get to a level which is very actually human. And the practical side of working with plants and working with farming or gardening is kind of secondary. It's kind of the easy part.
Okay. To conclude, everyone, so we produced a lot from our side, and now I want to invite each and one of you to contribute from this. So I invite you to go there. I'm sending a little link on the chat. I invite you to share in 1 or 2 words what are your feelings about this webinar and the topic in itself. And it's going to show something quite interesting altogether. So it will be a collaborative exercise. So as soon as we have a few entries, we're gonna share. So hit it. I can see a few answers. So just go there, share a little. I'm waiting. You're waiting.
At the same time. Thank you, Lena. Thank you. Yes, so once again, I don't know how much you heard, but I wrote that again. So yeah, let's do some collaborative work, and let's share something together. What about your feelings about today? And yeah, we will share. You will share what is happens. Yeah, can you click on that? I think 3 things at the same time. And yes, it is showing. Yeah, can you share it?
Am I sharing that?
No, yeah. This is next level of coordination. Thank God we're together. Yes. Wow. Okay. Thank you very much for your kind words. Thank you. And thanks again, Antoine. So a lot of people had their mic cut for the session. I think it would be a really nice moment now to unmute yourself and maybe give some round of clapping for Antoine that did that on such a short notice, or we could do it in in the silent way, but don't hesitate. Now, so it's a good time to open your mic, clap a little, and just give your feedback. Yeah, I see a lot of chat. Again, we are hosting these sessions all week long, every day, 12:30. Today a little over 1 p.m., but yeah, we really want to share what we have here, the philosophy for each and every one of our community member. And tomorrow is going to be a visit. Tomorrow it's going to be a live visit of Suderbyn. We talked a lot about food. We're going to show you the garden. We're going to show you the farm. We're going to show you the workshops, hopefully the cats that are roaming around, and maybe some humans, definitely a few. Yeah. And if you want to reach out to give us any feedback or any comments, there's a Facebook page, of course. I need that so that we can show how it works. Otherwise, you can already write us directly an email at info@suderbyn.com. And yeah, so now we're gonna close it with these nice, kind words from everyone. And yeah, have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Antoine, again.
Thank you.
Bye.